My question for us today is this. What colors do we have to mix to get gold? What colors do we have to mix to get gold? Just about a week ago, maybe a little more than a week ago, but not much more than that, there was a report. I first saw it on CNN News with a shocking information. And I'm reading the quote that you see on the screen here. The Navajo Nation has surpassed New York State and New Jersey for the highest per capita coronavirus infection rate in the entire country. Another sign of COVID 19's disproportionate impact on minority communities. There are any number of reasons for that. It is not it is not related to weaknesses in the DNA of Native Americans. It is related to availability of medical attention, and then in case of a diagnosis, medical treatment. And then for many people in the United States who are ill, just the simple lack of information and the slowness for many people of available medical equipment and access to personnel. Uh, a lot of people don't know who to go to or where to go. It's confusing and frightening, and of course, the stigma is, uh, yeah, overwhelming. We should never see another headline like this. We should never have seen this one. The freedom that certain white police officers have to um, to exercise police brutality, violence, and so forth when um, dealing with arresting African American citizens, that they kill them, um, gets excused. In this case, four officers were involved in an incident. One officer putting his knee on a man's throat, around at a man's neck, and you can see graphic pictures of this. They were fired. That's not sufficient. Um, we know that some policemen who've been fired, policemen and I guess women as well, have been fired in one jurisdiction for doing something, and they get hired by some other jurisdiction, 20 miles away or something to that effect. Mr. Floyd is dead now after the policeman kept his knee on his neck, even after Mr. Floyd told him he couldn't breathe. And people are making fun of the deceased, saying if you can talk, you can breathe. Well, that's not necessarily true at all. People who have asthma problems, or some people, I mean, if you're face down on the ground and somebody's knee is on your neck, you can't breathe. It shouldn't be an issue. If somebody's telling you that, that he can't breathe, the person shouldn't have been in police, in the custody of police in the first place. But this is pure racism. There should be no discussion about the wrong here. Um, there should be rapid justice for the victim and his family who remains, and the the wrongness of it should be pointed out and screamed from the high heavens. There's a critical lack of respect for other people in our nation. People divide up into groups, racial groups, economic groups, religious groups, you name it, and vilify people who are not in their particular group. And sometimes to the point that they're willing to be violent toward those people who aren't in their groups, even people who claim to be followers of Jesus. This is absurd, um, but we've been living in the world of absurdity ever since a certain person came into political power. Trump is not to be blamed for what he gets by with. The people who elected him are partially at fault, but those who continue to enable him are primarily at fault. And that includes to a great degree the religious right in this country, people who claim to be followers of Jesus, who continue to enable um, from the White House racism, the very specific racism called anti-Semitism, a special gift of Stephen Miller. But it's not only Stephen Miller, because he too is enabled by mostly people we don't know about who give money and energy to this kind of thing. Um, the idea behind the Constitution as it developed was equality. And admittedly, not every person or group was considered by the founders and framers, but that was supposed to have been addressed by adjustments, amendments, and so forth to the Constitution. We all, in this country, indeed, really around the world, but we can't control what others do around the world. We can control what goes on here. Everyone should be free. Everyone should have basic rights. Um, and that should include freedom from fear, freedom from abuse, from those who don't like how they look or how they talk or something like that. Here's a picture from Memorial Day weekend of who knows how many people completely ignoring mask recommendations, glove possibilities, and social distancing. Um, it should be someone's right if she or he wants to live in such a reckless way that um, uh, she or he loses life. I mean, that's a terrible thing, as I've said before, fairly recently actually, but to live in such a way to put someone else's life in danger, it seems to me that that has always been um, clearly against the law. Um, Having been a pastor in New Orleans, as many of you know, in the early years of the AIDS uh, crisis, which became also a pandemic, um, someone could suffer serious legal consequences for having a sexual encounter with someone and not telling the sex partner of their HIV positive status if they knew it. In this case, people who know that um, they are positive with the coronavirus are not wearing masks out, and also all the information about how many asymptomatic carriers are out there should encourage people not to be out without masks, just to take care of other people. But we have a massive angry movement of people who think any kind of restriction on them somehow minimizes their freedom as Americans. Taking care of our fellow citizens um, and seeing to the well being of our fellow citizens does not diminish American freedom. That's nonsense. Being careless with one's own health, once again, not good, but that is one's freedom to the extent that it doesn't imperil the health or the life of someone else. So, this is a picture of some very irresponsible people, and there were pictures like this all over the place from the Memorial Day weekend. Again, what colors do we have to mix to get gold? Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. We used to sing at the Beaver Dam Baptist Church down in Halls Cross Roads. Red, brown, yellow, black, and white. They are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. The golden rule, the ethic of reciprocity, is one of the most kind of common sense things you can imagine if you take some time just to think about it. On the other hand, because of the way people behave in groups, which very often is a whole lot different than the way people would behave individually and independently if they had the opportunity. But because of the way people tend to behave in groups, the golden rule, the ethic of reciprocity, becomes a very sophisticated mark of spirituality. Do unto others, Jesus said, though he was not the first to say this by any stretch of the imagination. It can be found in a form all the way back in Hinduism, going back some 4,000 years. But he said it nonetheless. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I can vividly remember when Vice President Biden was still Senator Biden, and the debate was raging in this country as to whether or not waterboarding was a suitable way to get information out of enemies. Um, and one of the things that then Senator Biden said in a hearing, I suppose it was, in the Senate, was one of the reasons we don't torture people in that kind of way is because then when some of our men and women are prisoners of war, that's exactly what happens to them. The principle of reciprocity. I can't imagine that the policeman who kept his knee on this gentleman's neck until I think he was dead. I don't think he died at the hospital. Mr. Floyd would want that done to him. The color gold I'm talking about can only be mixed from blending all colors of humanity together. Because only then can the golden rule make sense. All people from all corners of the human race are a part of what makes up the color gold in the golden rule. And the principle then of the golden rule then applies to each one of them. And we hope when we're on the receiving end to us. The world needs a heavy, heavy dose of that right now. Our own country needs a heavy, heavy dose of that right now. And trying to sort out these confusing matters related to the coronavirus, we need heavy, heavy doses of the golden rule right now. Right now. Why would an artist of spirituality or why would an artist of ethics ever need to mix a tarnished gold color? The gold of the golden rule still gleams brightly, but the gold in how it is put into practice these days in many places is so dull.